You know, every once in a while, somebody comes along and pops out of the blue into the media limelight and basically into the consciousness of the rest of us and has a unique voice, a unique perspective, and does some hard work to show for his efforts and upsets the equilibrium of the powers that be. Andrew Breitbart, our next guest, is one of those people. His book is called Righteous Indignation, Excuse Me While I Save the World. He is an American publisher, commentator for the Washington Times, and on various news programs. He served as an editor for the Drudge Report website, which, you know, as you listen to the show, is something I cite regularly. And interestingly enough, he was a researcher for Arianna Huffington way back when the Huffington Post was first getting on its feet. He currently runs his own news aggregation site, which is called Breitbart.com, and I'll spell it for you. B as in boy, REITBART.com, from which many, many important news stories have emerged. Welcome, Andrew Breitbart, to the Lisa Wexler Show.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for having me. And I actually created the Huffington Post as a conservative for Arianna when she was a liberal. Years and years before that, I was actually her conservative column researcher for her conservative column. And then she switched to the left, came to me in 2004 after the election and said, "Do you have any ideas for me for a website?"
Oh, boy.
And I said, what if your crazy, zany, left-wing, bush-lied, people died, hypocritical, jet flying from coast to coast, eco-warrior friends would put their crazy ideas into a group blog? It would be very helpful for you. You'd become the queen of the left-wing blogosphere, which she did, and then it would be a boon for talk radio types and internet types like us. It would be found content where you could see this is what the hard left thinks. It's very illuminating, and my big thesis in the book, Righteous Indignation, is media is everything, and I come from the purist First Amendment camp that believes more voices, not less.
You forgot limousine liberal, Andrew.
Oh, well, that's our champagne.
That's right.
Champagne leftist.
You forgot all that. So
that's where I live. I live in Brentwood. I know these people better. I know them better than I know me.
I thought really, it's fun to read your book. First of all, it's very conversational. It's very entertaining. And it's interesting because you weren't born out of a pod into some, as some people might imagine, evangelist background where you only heard one doctrinaire way of thinking. In fact, quite the opposite. You grew up in a family of traditional middle-class values who didn't really touch politics. You became enmeshed and involved in a left-of-center kind of a lifestyle, and then you decided to go to the right of center in terms of your political thought.
Well, I'm no David Horowitz. I mean, when he took his transition from the left to the right, he was so steeped in the intellectualism and the tactics of the left. I was just a dude going along to get along and trying to, I don't know, how do I say this in a kind way, have my way with the ladies in high school and college. And so default liberalism was everything back in there. It was so shallow that in hindsight, I have the dumb chills thinking about it.
That's really interesting. By the way, I noticed that one of the first light bulbs that went on with you when Arianna Huffington had her list of to-dos was that she asked if you knew LexisNexis. And I, just so you know, and this will date me a little bit further, older than you, that was my first job out of NYU Law School as a summer job. After my first year, I taught Lexis for Me Data Institute at the Pan Am building at 200 Park Avenue.
Oh, hey, you and I could flirt over Boolean logic.
I mean, it was really something. I used to teach search terms near, within, five of. You're talking way back when in the search world.
I still to this day use LexisNexis, and if you're an information junkie in the age of the internet and you're looking for the purest form and you've got some extra dollars, there's nothing better than LexisNexis.
It's true, because it's primary source. Absolutely. Oh. Yeah, it's exactly right. It's the cases themselves. That's exactly right. So your book has so many different ways to go, and I think I could spend hours talking with you about it. I want to go over, you make a comment in your first chapter that the Clarence Thomas case, of all things, really turned your head around. Tell us why.
Well, it's like the Matrix. You one day you're living your life, and then you recognize that you're living in the Matrix. And the first light bulb above my head that there was something wrong, it didn't clarify things politically. It just caused me to realize that there was something wrong, is that the people that I respected, the people who were the arbiters of objective truth, the mainstream media, seemed to say that this guy was guilty before he even had his trial. the Tom Brokaws and the Peter Jennings of the world, went along with the National Organization for Women. And it was interesting that the NAACP was silent on the second black pick to be a Supreme Court justice. And when I listened to when I watched the entire trial, or the trial, it literally was a trial, and the best that they had was that he once said that there was a pubic hair on a Coke can.
Right.
In all the years that Clarence Thomas was with her, in which she got raises and promotions, and he was being judged by, of all people, Joe Biden, a series of white privileged men, Joe Biden, Howard Metzenbaum, and in particular, Ted Kennedy. Something didn't sit right here. I mean, I had just read the Joe McGinnis biography, The Last Brother, by Joe McGinnis on Ted Kennedy, and for that man to sit in judgment of another man's treatment of women seemed like high irony to me.
Okay, but let me ask you about this, because I come at this from a different point of view, and I found Anita Hill's testimony to be credible. And here's where my question is for you. From my point of view, and it shows you how people see things differently, I felt that she was the one that was unfairly on trial. And I felt that she was being... I didn't understand what her motive could possibly be for lying, because it subjected her to such...
Abortion.
What do you mean by abortion? That
was the whole subtext of this thing, is that she was a liberal activist who was doing the bidding of the feminist movement. At the end of the day, when she laid out her alleged claims against Clarence Thomas, they added up to nothing, especially when 2 years later the same people that put up her to be up there as an example of what it's like to be sexually harassed, the Bill Clinton was put up as the standard bearer of liberalism in the Democratic Party. It was the perspective of the Thomas and the Bill Clinton. The hypocrisy wasn't hypocrisy. It was titanium level, nuclear grade hypocrisy that Bill Clinton, with the way that he treated women within the workplace, was deplorable. And the same powers that be, the media, the feminists, and even Anita Hill, were silent over this. This was all about politics.
I agree. No, there was huge hypocrisy. No, there's huge hypocrisy. I mean, for the NAACP to not say, no matter what, we support this man, he's a black man, this is, after all, the National Association for the Advancement.
What's saying a pubic hair on a Coke can? In 6 years of going job to job to job, maybe if somebody said that, knowing somebody, maybe you could say, I'm very sensitive to those type of things. I found it gross, but certainly not a reason enough. Hardly a trend of behavior that was demeaning towards women and putting her in her place. He didn't force her to date him in lieu of getting job promotions and stuff like that. This was just a setup based upon abortion politics, that women were so scared. Feminist women were so scared that an anti-abortion guy would get up there, they were willing to use her, and she was willing to be used.
All right, so Andrew Breitbart, who I'm chatting with on the Lisa Wexler Show today, as long as you talk about abortion, this is one of the things I wanted to ask you.
Because it's such a fun topic.
No, I really want to ask you about this because I care about it. In fact, my daughter was just saying to me this morning, Mom, why can't the Republicans just get away from that subject so that maybe I could vote for them? Because let me just, from the point of view of a lot of women who care a lot about reproductive rights in general, and that means contraception as well as abortion, I mean, and pelvic care and all that stuff and rights, for Republicans who are so grandstanding about getting the government out of decision making of so many kinds, and rightly so, by the way.
Well, I mean, you have to, what I wouldn't do is denigrate where they're coming from. They believe that it's a life. It's not a polyp. It's not a fingernail. It's not a breast augmentation. It's not silicone. In their mind, it's life. And so I respectfully I disagree with you. I am not a religious person. I'm agnostic, but I'm also adopted in a pre-Roe baby, and all my friends in college and high school, weirdly, were disproportionately adopted, and I'm realistic enough, not unlike the actor Jack Nicholson, who's pro-life, because I was spared abortion. And so I will respectfully disagree. I don't grandstand, but I really do. My conscience tells me that that's a life, and I certainly believe in erring on the side of caution with something that's so transcendent.
You know, I respect that. I have a very dear, I don't know if you read my book, Secrets of a Jewish Mother, but my best friend in the whole world is a fundamentalist Christian from 30 years ago at Johns Hopkins, and we have had heated arguments and debates on this for the last 30 years. So I have a tremendous respect from where good-hearted people are coming from, and she herself adopted 2 biracial children who were not as desirable, per se, as other children, and therefore were cheaper, if you can believe that, and I know that you can.
Your friend is my hero, by the way.
Yeah,
that's the greatest story I can possibly hear.
Yeah, no, she's an amazing person, and she walks the walk. But I guess what I'm saying is that I understand and I respect that point of view. I just still believe that even while I respect that point of view as a moral point of view, I think, like some other things, the government should stay out of it. I do. And I respect the other side, but I still come across that way.
Well, we're living in a time where your daughter doesn't have a choice, or your friends don't have a choice who are women on this. This is a fiscal responsibility, an era of fiscal responsibility. The Tea Party certainly isn't talking about abortion. We're not going to have a country to debate whether or not there's abortion or not.
No, you don't think that's
the house in order.
Well, let me ask you this then. Why would a candidate like Donald Trump feel it necessary to say, oh, I've been pro-life for a while, if he wasn't running to get a Republican?
Well,
I mean, be honest with me.
You're talking to a person who do you doubt his sincerity? I'm kidding.
A little, yeah. Just a little bit, Andrew.
Right. Well, that's because the Republican base is pro-life, but and I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I support that position, but I don't. My big thing right now is fiscal responsibility, a return to the Constitution, etc. I'm not going to stand down from my position on abortion. And hell, I'm not running for office. I'm completely politically incorrect within the conservative movement. I'm the guy who went into CPAC, the big conservative convention, and celebrated and threw a party for Go Proud, the gay conservative group.
Yeah, is that because you don't feel that gay rights should be part of the federal agenda? Or tell me why.
Because I have gay friends who are conservative, and if it's hard to be a conservative out here in Hollywood, think about how hard it is to be gay and conservative in the gay community.
And it's hard to be pro-choice and a Republican today.
I don't know. I'm not giving you a hard time.
No, it is. It just is. I mean, and I would like for more people to be that way. I'd like it to be a bigger tent. All right, I want to ask you a couple of other things. Oh my God, your book is full of so many things.
You sound like every mother I grew up with, by the way.
And I hope you mean that in only the nicest way.
I had the greatest upbringing you could imagine. I had to wake up and realize that there was a reality out there. My life was fun, hanging out with my friends and their mothers and their fathers, and we'd go skiing, and we had the life.
When you said your mother's name was Arlene, I had an Aunt Arlene and an Aunt Marlene right on Green Place in Woodmere.
Oh, my best friend in college was from Woodmere, David Greenfield.
Well, it sounds like a familiar name, Andrew, but I can't say I know the family. Andrew Breitbart is on the line with us. His new book is called Righteous Indignation, Excuse Me While I Save the World. And you've got to check out his website. It's called Breitbart.com, BREITBART.com, for a wonderful site of late-breaking, wonderful Internet news, news really from around the world. And, Andrew, I wanted to ask you about this in this 24/7 news cycle. I mean, really, how can you sleep? And I mean that seriously.
It's not. It is 100% not healthy. I did the Drudge Report for years with Matt Drudge, and it indulged me my love of the news wires, and I would read the news wires voraciously, and I would find out things 3 minutes ahead of Katie Couric, and that was enough for me. It was an addiction. Mm-hmm. Just knowing that the tsunami happened, or a 7.8 earthquake happened before the networks break in on it. It just is a very exciting thing to do, and all I can say is some people are addicted to really bad things. I'm legitimately addicted to the news cycle, to the point where when I have to fly, and I've flown a lot for my book tour. I flew to from Los Angeles to Jacksonville, Jacksonville to Wisconsin, Wisconsin to Chicago, Chicago to New York, New York to D.C., D.C. to Los Angeles. And every single segment, I try to make sure that there's internet on the plane, or else I end up looking at the seat in front of me thinking I'm going to have a nervous breakdown on that flight if I'm not on the internet. So it's not healthy. It's
not healthy at all. Though Delta, I understand, is selling the idea of Wi-Fi now all the time, all the way.
When you're coming down the plank, or whatever they call those little things getting into the plane, and you see that side Wi-Fi thing, for me, it's like seeing the American flag after being away from America for a month.
All right, so Andrew Breitbart, I'm going to ask you something about the Shirley Sherrod thing, not to dominate our conversation because we've been having a great time.
Certainly.
Do you think that you made a mistake in terms of the editing of that particular video?
No, not at all, and that's the misconception, is that people think that I edited anything. The mainstream media narrative on day one of my 1,400-word story 1,400-word story comes out on big government. I have 2 videos that complement it. In the actual 1,400-word article, I write, eventually her basic humanity informs her to help the white farmer. And at the very end of the actual video that everybody says that was heavily selectively edited, it has her narrative, her redemptive narrative that she claims that she had, that says, I realized it wasn't about black versus white, it was about rich versus poor. What ended up happening is that the mainstream media selectively edited out the context, tried to make it appear that I was making an attack on Shirley Sherrod, when it was clear in the article that this was about the NAACP's continued attack against the Tea Party. It had claimed that it was racist, and it used as the centerpiece that the N-word was hurled at Congressmen Carson and Lewis. I made the statement the week before to Ben Jealous of the NAACP. If you're going to go out there condemning the Tea Party as racist, those that live in glass houses should not throw stones. I have video that shows your audience reacting to a lady talking about a racist tale of doing what she did to the white farmer and not helping him. It was the media wanted something to tear me down on because I had been so effective, and I tried to go out there and say, hey, look, read the 1,400-word piece. They've ignored it because it became an effective way to try and tear me down.
And you were effective in terms of tearing down Acorn. That has to be one of your great triumphs.
It was, Hannah and James came to me with a bow with a box filled with these videos. They did it. They were ingenious to even have orchestrated it. It was a very successful hit. But when they came to me, I said, this will be ignored. We need to aim this at the mainstream media that would ignore this and claim that this isn't news. And every step of the way, the mainstream media fell into our trap, taking Acorn's side. And by about the 4th video, they could no longer go to Acorn, who had been proved to be liars in trying to defend themselves, and eventually it caused the mainstream media to say, we can defend you no more, which opened it up for Congress defunding Acorn.
Now, one of the larger points of your book is that you really think President Obama is a poor leader, a poor president, and when he came in almost as a cipher, as an unknown person that was put there by other forces.
Well, I mean, come on. I mean, this is the least vetted president in the world, and anyone that started to ask questions about the big Swiss cheese holes in his history. I mean, this guy's like only, 45, 46 when he's running for the presidency. He grew up, in his 30s, his peak years of his career, and his ascendancy from being a community organizer to being a politician in Illinois was of being on videotape. I mean, there were handheld cameras and new media back in the 1990s. There were cameras. Where are the cameras? Where are the videos of him? I mean, what we do know is this man in Reverend Wright's church. What we do know is his relationship with Bill Ayers. And what we now know through the work of academic Stanley Kurtz, radical in chief, is that at no point in his trajectory from the prep school in Hawaii to Occidental College through Harvard Law and Columbia, did this guy ever relinquish and have what I had? I had an epiphany. I realized that I was a liberal, and I'm no longer a liberal. At no point did he give up what he talked about in his first book, was how he aspired not to be with your typical run-of-the-mill liberal, but with radicals. And this man has spent his entire life with radicals, and the things that he's doing right now with Richard Trumka, the head of the AFL-CIO, and Andy Stern, formerly head of the Andy Stern, is community organizing America into this